All right. We're back live in the Counselor's Corner. Tonight's segment is Cocktail Conversations featuring author Carlos Muhammad. I have my man Herbert Lewis on the side, and tonight I will be interviewing my brother Carlos Muhammad tonight in the Counselor's Corner on his newly released book, Systemic Racism. Boy, oh boy, is that right on time, that subject, after everything we've been going through, especially I think it's been magnified during this pandemic. Author Carlos Muhammad is the 2017 winner of the Family and Parenting Award at the Independent Author Legacy Award ceremony. Currently, this book is in Amazon's top 50 for newly released poetry books. Please make sure that you support and get your copy. I think the link somehow I'll try to put the link on throughout the in the thread this evening, but it's also on post on my page and also in the Counselor's Corner. So let me give you little more background. This is his third book from the two-time award winner Carlos Muhammad. This book provides us with a poignant look at systemic racism and how it affects all aspects of life in America. During a time when America has been wrestling to rid itself of the coronavirus plague, its negligence of its ongoing racial pandemic continues to fester. Systemic Racism, American Poet Analysis, addresses the racial pandemic in an artistic way that is creative, poetic, and very thought provoking. Carlos Muhammad is an educator, author, activist, poet, public speaker. He is the author of three books. He presently resides in Baltimore, Maryland, but has also served as an educator in Niagara Falls, Buffalo, Washington, D.C., uh, New Jersey, and the Bronx. You can follow him at Carlos Muhammad on Facebook, at Love for Self on Twitter, and at Los underscore cause on IG. So we in for a good show. Carlos, yes, even though he has a different name, that's by religion. Muhammad is my biological brother, so he's actually was the one who motivated me to write a book. And I've told this story many times. He, came by one day, and I was posting my scenarios on a daily basis, and he said, "Dude, where do you get these stories that you keep posting?" I said, "You can't make it up. You can't make it up." And he's like, "These are real situations?" I'm like, "Yeah." But with me, I try to be clever, maybe change the name, change a little subtle details. And so people really don't know, just to kind of protect the innocent. So then he said, "Why don't you write a book?" I said, I'm not a writer like that. He said, "Actually, you are. You always been creative." So at the time, when you hit your 40s and you've been working and you start thinking about developing your own brand. And for me, that had been going through my mind. So that's what led me to say, okay, cocktail conversations. And I knew that David Glover just wouldn't, that was going to hit on anything. So that's when I said, came up with the controversial counselor, because I'm a school counselor by trade during the day. So that led me to end up writing my book. So he was motivating in that factor. So Carlos has always been someone that was artistic. When we were out playing football, he was brainstorming, coming up with like flip books, and then he used to rap and do different things like that. He used to draw, and that's the one thing I always get on him about. Like some of his urban drawings is, man, like that, it's like the fake JJ Evans on Good Times. Like still think he should pursue that, but I'm not gonna belabor the point. We have him. He's in the studio, so I'm gonna bring him in right now. What's going on, Carlos?
What's going on? What's going
How you
on,
doing?
Herb?
Hey man, assalamu alaikum, brother.
Walaikum salam, bro.
All right, man. So we have you here. I kind of read the little introduction, bio, talked a little bit about your influence on me becoming an author, and just sort of like your path, whatever. Like I said, motivating me. So here you are, man. Talk to us, whatever. I mean, you could give a brief your bio, and then we'll go from there. I have some questions and stuff for you,
Okay.
but you could give your introduction.
First and foremost, I would like to thank my brother for giving me the opportunity to come on his forum to talk to you all about my third book, Systemic Racism and American Poetic Analysis. Um, Before I get into any of the detail, I'll just give a brief bio. I know David said pretty much everything about me. I've served in education also for about 20 years now. And even prior to being a quote unquote educator, I felt like I was educating because I was, learning while I was a teenager, especially about the plight of our people. And I was still educating people at that point about the plight of our people. So education has always been something that was dear to me. I had the opportunity to, with Herb, we was a part of a organization in college called the African American Student Organization.
Absolutely.
And some of the conversations we had in that campus was like, it's above what, a lot of people are talking about right now. We were like, on point as 19, 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and a lot of the stuff is still relevant. So
yeah,
I had to come on this show first and foremost before going anywhere or before interviewing anywhere because, for one, I have a relationship with both of these brothers, and one is my biological, but Herb has also been a part of an organization I was a part of, and I knew him, I believe, since we were in maybe elementary school.
yeah, we're back.
For a small stint, and then high school,
Yep.
and the brother was in college, and we was in the same Black Student Union organization, African American Student Organization. So this is personal, and hopefully, this conversation that we have today will bring out some of the greater issues. We'll talk about something that's really important right now. I think the topic of systemic racism, it's not only a catchphrase, so to speak, in this day and time, but it's a very important topic in general. So hopefully we'll delve into it, and I can talk about why I wrote the book and why I chose to do it in a poetic way as opposed to just writing a book, and analyzing it from that standpoint. So, I look forward to the conversation.
All right, all right. So, I'm gonna let Herb. You got anything you want to ask Carlos or relating to what we said so far?
I think that first. Well, actually, you know what? Well, let me start by saying this. It's a privilege, honestly, to be sitting with you brothers. I know your brother has inspired you to write books, and I'm working on a few things myself that hopefully in the next few years I can get published. I have some other things that I'm sitting on too that hopefully I can get into brand, merchandising and things of that nature. So I think this is a situation in a time where brothers, we have now that we have the technology and we're, kind of free of the constraints of society, we are not only able to speak our piece, but we're able to speak to the realities to which we all have been reared in, and we have come of age of. We've been able to cut our teeth individually and collectively as a unit, to push forward and forge, and leave a message that, we're not the sum total of what society believes us to be, criminals, deadbeat fathers, uninvolved, leaving the communities, in disrepair. I mean, that just simply isn't the truth. And so often we are fighting an uphill battle to try and prove that, when in actuality, the door should be open for brothers like us to do better. But so often we have to fight for everything we get. And even when we earn it, we still have to turn around and give credit to somebody, even though the credit that they deserve is usually minuscule or none. There have been very few people who have actually took us aside and pointed us in the direction that we needed to go without us making some mistakes. Now I know I made my own share of errors coming up as a young man. I dropped out of high school. I didn't finish college, but yet here I am, a homer. I run for public office. I'm in the midst of putting together a mentor program, and all these things are usually just pushed aside and say, well, these are things you're supposed to be doing. If these are things that we are supposed to be doing, why not make it easier for us? You know, we look at the rates of unemployment among us, incarcerated, homeless, underemployed, underpaid, and the list just goes on. I could sit all night and talk about this. So, you know, it's just a privilege to sit among you brothers. Like I said, you know, like Carlos has said, high school, college, on into our adult years, and I'll be 50 this year. And if somebody would have told me 30 years ago I lived to be 50, I'd be like, I wonder what that's going to be like. You know, I wonder what it's going to look like. I just wonder, am I going to be alive? You know, because we see so many brothers that don't make it this far. Absolutely. So, you know, my blessings, you know, and I tip my hat to you two brothers, man.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. So, Carlos, when did you first realize you wanted to be a writer? Because I know for most of us as young black boys, whatever, growing up in school, writing wasn't necessarily our thing. I mean, I used to like spelling tests and stuff growing up, but too much writing, we just never got caught up in. Especially you always had that component that you liked the history, and most of us thought, man, this stuff is whack, it's boring, stuff like that. I like math growing up with numbers and stuff, but I was never in like history and stuff like that. I never got involved with that. So what made you be inclined to be a writer and just your love for history?
Interestingly, I remember I had a conversation with my father, and this is when during the time, and I know you remember this, Dave, I was going to summer school every year from like the 6th grade all the way up until probably the 10th grade.
Yeah, you was. Yeah, you was.
But ironically, I was failing history. I was always failing social studies, and I was always failing language arts. Reading classes, and it was always history, reading, and math. I would have to repeat during summer school. When I ran into my father one time, he said to me, why are you always failing history? And he told me, and he reiterated this to me every time he saw me. He said, I would always say, history is irrelevant. History is irrelevant. And, you know, I was a bit of a class clown in high school. And, you know, I mean, I'm still kind of silly right now. But because I was a class clown, I was constantly doing things to get students to laugh, to make students laugh. And there was a teacher that came in our class. It was actually a substitute at the time. And this substitute, he actually was wearing a dashiki. And I remember I was big into hip hop, as David mentioned. And I read Word Up magazine, Right On magazine, and there was a statement by Chuck D from Public Enemy that said, if you ask black people who Dr. Martin Luther King was, they could sum it up to, I have a dream. If you ask them who Malcolm X was, they would sum it up to by any means necessary. And at the time, I wasn't really familiar with Malcolm X. Ironically, my father used to walk around the house saying his name was Dahum Malik. He was incarcerated in and out of the penal system. And at some point, he embraced Islam while in jail. So when I would hear Shabazz, it all automatically brought me back to my father. So while I'm hearing this teacher talk about Malcolm X, I asked him a few questions. I was like, who was Malcolm X? So you think you're dropping some knowledge. Who was Malcolm? Then the teacher began to tell me who Malcolm X was. And that piqued my interest even further. So me, my brother Diedrich, and my friend Carl, we all went to the library and we literally we grabbed all of these books on Malcolm X. Actually, my friend Carl stole a book first. It was a book called Black Protest. He was at LaSalle. He stole a book. He was like, Carlos, I got some information on Malcolm. He was like, you will like this. And it was a picture of Malcolm holding a gun, the by any means necessary picture. And I was open. I was like, oh, this guy is like gangster. Okay, I want to learn about him. So we started, then we went into the library. We started reading about Malcolm. From that point on, it was on. We was reading about Malcolm. We started reading about Marcus Garvey. We just started reading. I remember I was reading like 7 books in a week. nonstop reading. And from that point on, Malcolm made a statement in that book. It was a book I had called Into the White World Supremacy. I still have that book to this day. Malcolm said, out of all of our studies, history is the most attractive and is best qualified to reward our research. At that point, a light switch clicked on, and my whole outlook on history changed. Then when I went to history class after that point, I literally started becoming more engaged in the process. I was raising my hand. I was challenging my teachers. My grades started going up to the point where I was actually able to finish high school and go on to go to college. But history became very attractive to me at that point. And that was one of the critical things that made it happen. Now, I know you said, and you talked about my childhood earlier. That was just to get into the history part. But when when did I think I was going to be a writer? Interestingly, I wrote about 200 books as a child. I used to write a bunch of books, fold them, staple them together, write these stories, and then put these books in a box. And everybody in our neighborhood would be like, yo, let me see the new book. And they would all, be reading my books as a child. And at that time, I never envisioned that I would literally physically write books. I was just a kid doing something as a hobby. I was drawing and I was writing my own books. So I never thought like, hey, at some point I'm really going to write a book. And I just enjoyed it. I just enjoyed writing and coming up with stories and creating these different narratives and then explaining them and seeing how the twists and turns would come out, as a child. And then at 12 years old, I ended up, playing with hip hop. And, me and my friends in the neighborhood, we had our little rap group and we would battle people. And, so when we got into hip hop, it was like all of those worlds at some point would end up coming together in terms of what I'm doing right now. And I explain that later down in the discussion. But I think I never knew it, but at some point the light came on. And that light came on at Buffalo State College. One of my professors by the name of Dr. Anthony Neal, he had a book signing on campus. And he had a book that he wrote. And I was like, hold on. I don't know anybody. Like, I know there's authors, but I don't know an author. Like, I didn't know anybody who was an actual author that was walking amongst me. So he was like, yeah, I have a book signing. I was like, okay. I was like, so what do I went to his office. I was like, Dr. Neal, how do you write a book? He was like, well, he said, first, he said, do you have a manuscript? I said, okay, I have a bunch of stuff written. He was like, bring me your manuscript and let me check it out. Now, mind you, I had nothing typed. I just had a bunch of poems and stuff written literally on different sheets of paper. I had some stuff on ripped up sheets of paper inside of a folder. And I brought this pile of mess to Dr. Neal's office and plopped it on his desk. And he was like, okay, bring this back when it's typed up. So I was like, okay, I'll bring it back. So a friend of mine from Buff State was like, I'll type the whole thing for you. And I'm grateful for her. She typed the whole book for me, put it in manuscript form. I came back to Dr. Neal. He was like, whoa. He was like, brother, he's like, this is too many poems. He was like, cut some of these poems out and then bring it back to me. I was like, no, sir. I was like, every poem in here, because I actually made the outline and everything. I said, every poem in here represents a thought that I want to convey. He was like, well, I'm just letting you know. He said, they're not gonna approve it if it's only a few poems. So I was like, and I was bothered by that. I was like, well, hold on. What if I want everything in here? Everything is expressing something I wanted. He was like, brother, you have to chop that down. So I went home and I contemplated. And I was like, you know what? I don't think this is the process I want to go through. I left, moved to Baltimore, came to a book fair in Baltimore, and seen a table for Black Classic Press. And everybody know Paul Coates for being one of the most popular Black publishers in the United States, Black Classic Press. He has a son, Ta-Nehisi Coates, who's pretty popular on the market. But his father, he's popular in Baltimore. He has Black Classic Press. They had a tent out at this book fair. And he was like, learn how to self-publish your own book. Come to our seminar on Saturday, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, I want to go to that. And I went to the seminar. The same young lady who typed up my manuscript came to the seminar with me. And when I sat through the seminar, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it myself. And I'll get into all of that because I know I'm kind of long-winded, but the rest is history. I went to that seminar and everything changed from that point on.
All right, so that's when you wrote your first book, Caress Spirits. That was another poetry book.
Yeah.
Then you wrote another book. What's that? You ain't.
Your daddy wasn't shit, so you're not going to do shit.
Yeah, your daddy ain't
Removing
shit.
harmful effects of curse words. I mean, you wrote the. My brother wrote the foreword, so
Yeah.
I was thankful for you writing the foreword for that book. I don't think I ever said it in the public forum since I'm on your show, but I appreciate you actually writing that foreword to that book.
Oh, no problem, man. And like I said, you the one who propelled me. Like I was before the show started, I was talking about when you came over that time and how I became a writer and start thinking about trying to. I'm working for Baltimore County Public School Systems, and me and one of my buddies always talked about, like, man, we got to get our brand. Baltimore County is not our daddy. We got to start working toward branding ourselves. So you kind of propelled me to this controversial counselor, the Cocktail Conversations. But I remember that special night. I think it was June 23rd, 2017, when we both were part of that Indie Legacy Award ceremony, and that was a magical night. And your category came up first, and
Yeah.
I kind of told you about the ceremony, and you kind of put your stuff together right quick, and
Yeah.
it was kind of shock when they called your name out. What was going through your mind? And you won that, was it for family and parenting, the book of the year for family and parenting?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't think I was going to win. And I know you should never doubt yourself. It wasn't that I didn't think the book was worthy to win. I didn't think I was going to win because I got in so late. And I just didn't seem like it didn't feel like it was a lot of support around that particular book in terms of people. And let me just touch on that for a minute because that was important. So the approach I took with this book and the approach I took with that book were totally different. So I felt like it was a lot of negative comments in regards to the title of the book. The book is actually behind me. I didn't even realize the book is right behind me. So it was a lot of negative commentary about this book, the title, the cover, the actual content, and I didn't know how they would take that at the award ceremony. So when they said Carlos Muhammad, the winner, I was like, "Whoa!" Like literally caught me off guard, but I felt like you was gonna win. Like I already felt like I know David's gonna win, but I felt like, I don't think I'm gonna win, and it wasn't because it was a self negation thing, and I didn't have any faith in myself. It wasn't even any of that. I just didn't think I was gonna win because I was like, it's too much negative commentary around the book, so I was actually shocked.
Yeah, and when you won, I was like on pins and needles, like, because I'm competitive. I said, "There's no way in hell he gonna win." I told him about this a couple weeks before, and I was in the process earlier.
Yeah,
And he wins, and I walk away with nothing. I mean, I was happy for you, but I was like, "Damn, it would be sweet if I win." Then they
yeah,
finally got to my category, and they called me out, and that
yeah.
was a wonderful evening. Whatever, two brothers.
Following that statement, Carlos, let me ask you a question. Why is it, or at least do you think, that when Native American Black males speak on a certain aspect of what we've endured, and it's true that we are always met with harsh criticism up until the point of being rebuked?
I think, and I know we all hear the crabs in the barrel, narrative, and we all hear about the Willie Lynch syndrome. And there's a lot of ways we can psychoanalyze the responses we get. A lot of it is hatred, but sadly, Black people, we just have a hard time supporting anybody that looks like us, that at one time walked amongst us, that may have been in our peer group. And then you'll see these same people. It could be a complete stranger, like a name any author, Michael Eric Dyson, and rest in peace. I know he recently passed, but he can get accolades and people post. People can.
You talk about Eric Jerome Dickey.
Eric Jerome Dickey. I'm sorry. Yeah. I said Michael Eric Dyson. Sorry about that, Michael Eric Dyson. If you're watching the show, but, these brothers will have their books. And the funny thing is, I asked a friend of mine to post the book. Your daddy wasn't shit, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, do you mind posting that book on your page? Just, so your friends can see it. She purchased the book. And she was like, well, I bought the book out of support, but I'm not going to post it because some of the, the title, my mom's is on here and so forth and so on. She wouldn't post the book. A few weeks later, I seen her post a book. I forgot the name of the book, but it was a similar title, like David, you know a lot of these self-help books, but it was a book with like not giving a fuck or something.
Well, I got that book.
Yeah.
Art of Not Giving a Fuck, I think.
Yeah. And I seen that book on her page, and I was like, whoa. It took me back because I was like, okay, she couldn't post my book, but a complete stranger who she had no relationship with, never knew, who used, expletives on his book cover, she had no problem posting it. But with me, it was like, nah. So I don't know what it is, Herb. I'm like, it's weird to me that we can know somebody personally and find it problematic to help propel that person to another level or to help get that author on the bestsellers list. Like I see my brother, his hustle. I commend my brother because even though I got him into writing, his hustle was way stronger than mine. I got to be pulled in. He called me sometimes. He's like, dude, what are you doing, man? Like, my brother DJ, they're like, what are you doing? Like, why aren't you writing another book? Where's your other book? Because they know I have stuff like in the arsenal. Like, when are you going to publish the other stuff? I'm working on it. And I'll get distracted. So when I seen them hustle, I was watching my brother post his book. He was the reason why I came up with the whole thing of like getting your friends to post pictures on your book. It was David who actually put me on to that. When I seen how he was doing it with his books, I was like, that's actually a pretty good idea because not only do you gain your audience, you also gain your friends' audience and they expose your book also. You got to remember, we're independent authors. Right. So we got to use different methods as independent authors, we got to use different methods of like advertising. We got to use different methods of getting our information out there. A lot of the word of mouth, concept. We really got to use that among social media friends and peers. So it's like a constant hustle and struggle in terms of like getting people on board with that. And people just don't, for some reason, they don't want to promote your stuff, but they will promote a stranger in a heartbeat. And I'm hoping some of my friends on here listen to this because if it hits you, it's for you.
Yeah, damn right. It's funny you say that because it reminds me of when myself and another childhood friend who you're familiar with, obviously, Connell Burch, when he ran for mayor in our hometown of Niagara Falls, New York, and I ran for city council. He's the one that really got me into politics in the realm that I am now. And we had to fight so hard to get people that look like us to support us and to sign our petitions. And it hurts. And it hurts in a manner that very few people will understand. To have to almost beg support. And when we go to people that don't look like us and we tell them what we're doing, they roll out the red carpet for us.
Yeah.
They sit us down, give us a scepter, a robe, and a crown, and they say, we are glad somebody is doing something. We are thrilled that somebody else sees the problem that's going on and they're willing to step forward, even if they fail to put their name in the hat and make a difference. And it's understated.
Yeah.
That, and they like to refer to it, or they used to once upon a time refer to as the educated lanes, how we receive so little backing when it comes to certain things. And I want to give a shout out to...
Hold on, Herb, I don't mean to cut you off. Our people like to ride a wave too. Like, yeah. Here it is, you're running for a political position. Carnell, both of y'all are upstanding guys, but the community won't get behind y'all. Now, I'm talking about the national elections. This is not to say anything negative about Miss Harris or Barack Obama, but our people rode that wave. Oh, we got to get them in office, blah, blah, blah. And I'm only saying that to say this. But your local person, your local politician, you can't help him out. Somebody who they're upstanding, that they haven't done any crime, they haven't hurt any person, but because somebody's on the national scene, you feel like you have an obligation to that person. If we start having that same obligation to like those people who are amongst us, who's to say that Herb couldn't be the next Barack Obama? Or who's to say that Carnell couldn't be the next Barack Obama? We have to put those people in that position. So it's like once we realize like we have to support our own people, we have to support our the stars amongst us, we're gonna still have that problem. We don't see those people. Like David, he wrote 3 books. I can guarantee you the amount of support he got compared to the amount of support that he solicited was a big gap. And I'm not saying that to say anything negative because it's, I face the same thing, but I'll see those same friends and they'll say they're your friends. Some of them won't even support you, or they'll say they supported you. This was interesting. People will tell me, yeah, I bought the book. And I know they didn't buy the book. Like,
yeah, your books doesn't,
Yeah, like, dude, they'll say, I just bought your book. Then I'll go look on my report and I'll see the numbers of who bought the book. Certain people will like communicate with me how much they bought. And I'm like, okay, you don't have to lie. You don't have to lie. You're not going to be in bad graces with me, or, I'm not going to judge you, or I'm sure David's not going to judge you. Nobody's going to judge you. You just got to look at your inner self and why are you having a problem with supporting somebody who may in some instances even supported you, because people come to us with their brand all the time. And, I've put money behind people and helped people out, and people solicited me for stuff and I supported them, but I didn't always get the same support. Not to say I'm doing what I'm doing for that support, but at some point we'll recognize our tribe and our tribe will recognize us. And those are the people that we really should be like uplifting and highlighting.
And that's the big thing. And I could say I've been doing blog talk, podcasting, and stuff like that. It's the complete strangers that out in California, Texas, and all that stuff that's been loyal. Like you say, it's people that you see, grew up with, broke bread with. They spent the night at your house. They peed in your beds. They did all of this stuff, whatever. And all of a sudden now, they got nothing for you.
Yeah.
So then they wonder why certain people, when they do make it, they have a chip on their shoulder because of that. And they take a couple people with them who've been there through the thick and thin. And we have to take chances. You can't always look at, oh, this is guaranteed. This is an athlete. So if he make it, I want to pump them up. And like Carlos and Herb said, we have to take people that authors, entertainers, clothing designers, or whatever they do, and rally behind them to get them to a certain point. Then a good-hearted person, once they get to that point, they're going to bring people along with them. They're going to build it up and then just keep branching off. That's what other races do. They build each other up and then they branch off. You have your team, then you have a bunch of different teams, just like the pyramid, the whole concept when you have these businesses and you have a team, then you get 3 people, they get people. That's the same thing when you make it. You build teams.
Absolutely.
Infrastructure.
As me, Carlos, is when we used to go to camp weekend when we were at Bus State. Now, see, camp weekend was at least for me was like the ultimate in teamwork. It was like everybody had something to do, and everybody did it. And we would go up there and we would have a blast, man. And those were, those were some of the most. I have a bunch of pictures that I actually need to start posting just to get them out there of all the people that used to go to camp weekend. But it was like a family.
Yeah.
We went up there for an express reason, and that was to have fun. And it almost seems like, since people have gotten out of school, whether they're married, have kids, or everything else, it's almost like that tribe feeling has been lost. We didn't need to seek support outside the room when we went in there Tuesdays and Thursdays at 12:35 during banger pause. And it's been 20 years since I've been in college, and I can remember the time.
Yeah.
35 to 140. We were there in a packed room every day. I remember when we had the issue with Smashing Pumpkins, and oddly enough, that was the thing that propelled me to run for USG. And I actually got elected off of that.
Yeah.
It was literally the first taste into organized government. And it was a different world to be sitting in there as one of the few faces that had darker hue, just to get an insight into what it was like to be a part of the process that determined how money was spent. And it was a world that we don't get to see. It's a world that we're not even exposed to. So for me, it becomes an exercise in involvement. And so often we limit ourselves to that involvement because we don't want to support each other. And we fail to realize that sometimes when you support somebody else and say, hey, you know what? Come with me so you can see how this works out. And that's how you spark the interest into the younger generations, because you take them along with you.
Absolutely.
And they see what it is and they say, well, how does this work? And you start to pique the interest, just like your father, just like the story you gave with your father. It reminds me of one time when I was at Lacell Preparatory, and they said the same. Some of the kids were saying the same thing that you said about history. They said, well, it doesn't make any sense. It's history. So I asked a simple question. I said, how many of you had a cell phone? Kind of a rhetorical question, but everybody pretty much raised their hand. I said, how do you think you got that phone? And they were, well, we went out to a bar. I said, no. That's not what I'm speaking of. I said, what kinds of inventions went into you owning that phone? And they had to stop to think about it. They said, well, I don't know. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I said, don't answer the question right now. I said, what I want you to do is break down that phone into its components. So you got glass, electronics, batteries, charging systems, wires. I said, go back and tell me who invented all of those things, and then tell me that history doesn't matter. And that's what they did. And at the end of what I would do is successive classes, I would challenge them with something that was from history. Now, we all know Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but these kids have no idea who Lou Alcindor was. So I'd ask, who is Lou Alcindor? Oh, no clue. I said, you're in the competition now. I said, at the end of this year, whoever gets the most correct answers will get a yearbook. So I gave an incentive behind it. And at the end of the year, and this was social studies, they understood the importance of learning history. So, those are some of the things that our people don't understand, that has an intrinsic value all of its own, that when you start to open books, those books open doors. And when you start to open doors, you start to get more opportunities. And when you get those opportunities can lead to a lot of other things. It's just like what David and I talk about when we talk about going out and ingratiating yourself to different people, speaking to different people, shaking hands with different people, because you never know what that handshake is going to lead to. You never know what door that hand is going to open for you, so you can walk through, so you can open another door. We tend to look the book, the spook that's at by the door, we tend to look at that as a bad thing. That's a good thing. Right. We want people to open that door so we can walk through. There have been people who have been hung, lynched, murdered, so we can sit where we are now and do the things that we do, and we still talk about racism as if racism is a problem that only they engage in.
So I want to definitely, at this point, with your last thought, I definitely want to get into now this systemic racism, because heaven knows this past year, all types of things have been going through our mind. You had the Black Lives Matter, you got the coronavirus, people off from work, people don't know if they're going back to work, schools is closed down. It's just been a whirlwind of emotions, in which LaToya asked the question. She said, why did you choose the name systemic racism, and what prompted you to write this book?
Well, like David was saying, the environment, it was the climate. Literally, I work in education too, and I don't know if it's the same with you, David. I'm working in the community schools, and literally every training, every workshop, every discussion probably had something to do with systemic racism, implicit bias. It was like that was the language being used around in the education. In addition to that, you turn it on the TV, especially after George Floyd passed away or was killed. Then you seen the riots and the rallies start forming. It was a lot of material that was just coming up in me. But ironically, I wasn't thinking I was going to write a book. I really wasn't. It wasn't until right around the time when during the political campaign, it started, coming close to. It had to be like close to November. This is how quick this all came up. So it's like November, and I woke up literally out of my bed one day, and I was like, I got to write a book called Systemic Racism, and I got to put this out. I said, I have to put this out before 2020 ends. Now, unfortunately, that didn't happen because it was some other, stuff with edits and book kicking back to me and me pushing it back. So it ended up coming out in January, but I was like, I got to put this book out. I said, if it don't come out in December, it will have to come out before the inauguration. So it was like a whole thing. I felt like because of the nature of what was going on, because of the conversations around the book, I felt like it was I had to put it out. And another thing, I didn't want to put out a book that was like informative. I had somebody who bought the book and she was like, oh my God, I was so happy when I bought this book. And it was a book of poetry. Like, you delivered the message of systemic racism, but I didn't have to do a lot of research. I didn't have to read a lot of, a whole bunch of big words. It was actually something that was done in a way where you can still provide all of those different things that you will find in any book. If you look up, if you do Google search on books on systemic racism, my book pops up along a lot of other books on systemic racism now. So she was like, I thought it was going to be one of those books along those lines, informational. You have to flip through a glossary, but it was basically poetry. And why did you choose to write a poetry book on systemic racism? And this is to answer your question, Latoya. But when we were children, we learned about Dr. Seuss, Mother Goose. Like, everything had like rhyme and rhythm. When we learned nursery rhymes, it was always rhyme and rhythm. It was always a scheme. It's something about the human brain that something has to literally have a certain rhythm to it. Even if you're reading something, it has to be a certain rhythm. And we grasp things. They become mnemonic devices when you grasp things that have a rhythm. Some psychologists say that rhyming actually facilitates reading. So if somebody is rhyming and they have the ability to rhyme and put words together that rhyme, it actually facilitates better reading, or they become more fluent in reading and certain things along those lines. So when I wrote the book, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it in a way where it's going to be easy for everybody. And I can literally touch on every aspect of what's going on right now, but I can also touch on every aspect of systemic racism and how it manifests. I can touch on the political climate. I can touch on the educational school system. I can touch on misogyny. I can touch on every aspect of how global white supremacy and systemic racism manifests itself. And one line in a poem is equivalent to 30 pages on a book. I'm going to say that again. One line on a poem is equivalent to 30 pages in a book, because you have to unpack every line. And if somebody is doing it in a way where you have to unpack it, then you'll begin to do some research on the actual content in the book. So it was a method to my madness, but I thought that was the best methodology I would use in order to put out that book. And the environment itself, it brought all of that out of me. Systemic racism. I have to write this topic. So I hope that answered your question, Latoya.
So
you know what's funny? Go ahead, David.
You know that we want to hear one of these poems in the book.
Okay. Well, I'm going to do, I knew that would come up. And one thing I hate performing and not committing to memory. But because of the nature and the time of the book, I put the book together. I didn't get a chance, really. I still work. I didn't get a chance to commit to memory. So please bear with me. People, bear with me. I don't like to read without memorizing, but I'm going to read. Okay, so bear with me. Systemic racism. Since we're talking about that topic, I'm going to go into that poem. It's the subtle racism. That's the blatant racism. Sometimes we take what's in our faces as a safe space to replace wisdom, demonizing those that make a case to deface what's racism, as the racists that we face when the system's laced with racism. If you celebrate Columbus Day, that's systemic racism. Thanksgiving and President's Day, are systemic racism. To a white Jesus you pray, that's systemic racism. All these slogans are so cliche and are facey racism. Let's do some math. Institutionalize the lies when the racism lies inside. Of the lies upheld with pride, for the ties we seldom hide. Racism is not simply actions, but adding actions are just a fraction of negative thoughts we multiply to divide people and make subtractions. There's inequality because nobody's equal. We're all just variables that come up later, with the probability that white supremacy is the common denominator. If you celebrate Independence Day, that's systemic racism. Giving George Washington a holiday is systemic racism. The names on streets and buildings today are systemic racism. All these slogans are so cliche and are facey racism. Red people were colonized by white people and now they're blue. Put the colors in their flag, but never flagged the things they did or do. Set up race as a social construct and made everything about them positive. Mistreatment soon followed from attitudes now embedded in the environment we live. These attitudes formed into beliefs that hardened into laws. Until this day, people are racially profiled and mistreated without probable cause. Some may argue about the things I mentioned and say they shouldn't even have been stated, not realize the systems continue by the lies perpetuated. If you subscribe to American history books, that's systemic racism. Not realizing the land was stolen by crooks to form systemic racism. White privilege from the white power structure today is systemic racism. All these slogans are so cliche and are facing racism now.
It's deep. That was nice. And like you said, just listening to you say that in a poetic way seems like it's more ingrained in your head than reading 50 pages of something, and half of the stuff you lose interest, you're not focused, you're not engaged. But I was very engaged in that and made a lot of sense. And that whole title, systemic racism, and that's the thing now that I often talk about when they say, oh, about the elections and the Democrats, Republicans. I said, as long as we still have the same system in place, nothing's going to change. Unless we change the system based on the people and what we're going through, we still going to catch hell all the time. And people put stuff in place with their system knowing that certain people always going to fail because of the system. And the system is only designed for certain people to succeed.
Yeah.
You know what? And I'm going to show y'all and explain to y'all a wrinkle in what Carlos just did that could be exploited that we probably don't even think about. What he just did is phenomenal. But I'm going to tell you how you take something phenomenal and make it exceptionally phenomenal. This is something that we can have our kids do. This is something we could dress our kids up and put them on stage in front of people and teach them by virtue of having them do a play. So you want to talk about making something visible to the masses and teaching them without them understanding they're being taught? Do this. Have them rehearse this and have them go out and do this. The kids are having fun. They're being taught, and you give that message to other people so they can take it back home to their people and teach their people. This is what we have to understand about how poetry excites and incites change, growth, and understanding.
Absolutely. Some of our greatest minds were poetically inclined. You talk about the Frantz Fanons, you talk about the Langston Hughes, you talk about the Maya Angelou's, the Nikki Giovanni's, the Sonia Sanchez's. Like, poetry has always been a part of our struggle, and the poetic voice has always been a part of our struggle for liberation in this country as well. Some of those poetic voices actually stimulated and motivated people to, get involved in activism and other things. So, we can't discount poetry and, how relevant it has been in our struggle for liberation in this country. But David, you said something. I wanted to, like that poem I wrote, Systemic Racism. I really wanted to tear away at the whole system, which is why I mentioned certain things like George Washington, giving him a holiday, and Columbus Day and the buildings that, you know, still have those images that if you went through the transatlantic slave trade, or if you went through this sojourn in the United States of America, and, you know, people always talk about, it's interesting that, you know, in biology, or, you know, even some psychologists say that DNA carries memory.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something they study now called epigenetics, where they talk about, you know, how from generation to generation to generation to generation, traumas are carried on through the generations. So there was a sister by the name of Dr. Joy DeGruy Leary, who wrote a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, where she talked about how psychologically the traumas that Black people faced during the plantation, they're still present with us today. And to this day, we have psychological slavery, or, you know, mental slavery that people are exhibiting, and we don't even know the root cause of our behavior. There's a lot of mental health issues in the Black community because we really don't know the root of our behavior. There's a lot of problems in the Black community because we don't understand the root of our behavior. So with all of that being said, we got constant triggers and constant reminders around us every day. If we ride down Washington Boulevard, or if we ride down, if we go to, you know, Columbia, or any of these places that's named after the captors or the people that created some of the worst atrocities and some of the most vile acts on our people, and people say, you know what, you know, that happened in the past, you know, let bygones be bygones. But I remember reading something about the Jewish Holocaust, and they were talking about how immediately in Germany they started eliminating Hitler, you know, memorabilia, anything that reminded, you know, Jews of the Holocaust. They started, you know, eliminating those different infrastructures. They didn't keep a statue of Hitler up in Germany. They don't have a statue of Hitler up anywhere in the United States, I don't think. And if there is a statue of Hitler, it's just to show the negative atrocities. But you won't see a statue of Hitler. But we'll see a statue of Christopher Columbus. We'll have a college or a university named after Christopher Columbus. We'll walk around and knowing that Columbus decimated the Native Americans, knowing what he did to set up, you know, our people in the Caribbean islands, and how, you know, our people went through, like I said, the worst atrocities. We'll still see those memories as Black people. So when I wanted to talk about it, I was like, yo, we need to tear up. If we're going to talk about systemic racism, let's not have this little, you know, let's hold each other's hands and have this conversation about systemic racism, but not really get into the issues, not really break down the whole. When you talk about something that's systemic, how is it systemic? Let's talk about that. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to tear away of, you know, that whole mentality. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad always said something. He said, if you want to change the condition of a people, you have to change their thinking. If you don't change the thinking of a people, you're going to pretty much create or replicate the same process over and over and over and over again. So I think that was critical, and that was key to me. And, like, you know, when I wrote that poem, I literally was like, okay, I have to attack everything that's systemic, everything that's constantly reinforced, perpetuated, that keeps the system going over and over and over again. I have to tear away at that. So I'm going to do it in the poem, but I'm going to tear away at all those things that's a part of the fabric of this environment. If we're going to talk about systemic racism, we got to do that.
And I think something else to what you're saying is we as a people, we have to get beyond what divides us and creates a chasm between us to what can unite us and bring us back together. I think that is lost upon a great many of us. And despite all of our issues, and we do have some issues, you know, but those issues need to be looked at for what they are. And then we need to address them in their entirety so we can get by them, because that's the only way we're actually really going to be able to make a cohesive unit and to be able to rectify the situations that exist in our homes, in our communities, and actually to a larger extent for a lot of people in their families. Now, I just so happen to be blessed, like you gentlemen, that I come from a tight-knit family, and despite, you know, losing the matriarch of our family back in November, we're a more cohesive unit now than we probably ever been. You know, there's 8 boys, 3 girls, and we roll together like a couple of fists. And, you know, if anything gets in our way, you know, that tries to come between us, it gets crushed. And I think that's how we need to operate as a people.
Absolutely.
Well, Latoya asked the question. She said, "How do you propose that we begin to heal our communities that are affected by these issues?" And I think that's the bigger thing, and that's one of the things. Of course, I don't get into all the lingo, but when I thought of cocktail conversations, despite the title or whatever the case is, I looked at having conversations amongst us, starting with family and things like that, because no matter what, you can have Jesse Jackson, Barack Obama, whoever out coming talking to the community, but if homes are dysfunctional, it doesn't matter. When you got dysfunctions in your home, soon as you step out in the community, those that becomes a community issue.
Right.
And with kids going to school, that becomes a school issue. So all of this stuff starts from the home. So unless we work on the home environments, none of that stuff matters. You can go to church, you can pray, you can go to the mosque, you can do all that. But when you step back into that home and you got dysfunctions, this stuff just linger on.
Yeah,
Just linger on.
And I think to answer her question, what we have to do first is we have to be accountable to ourselves. I think far too often we're always looking for somebody else to be accountable before we are, and that's not going to work. I'm sorry, it's ineffective. It casts blame on everybody else except where the blame needs to be. I don't care how insignificant an individual thinks the blame is. If you do something and it ends badly, the first thing you need to say is, you know what did I do wrong, or what could I have done better? And this is something I always talk to my mentees about. I ask them, what is the one thing in this world that you need to accept to be responsible? And to an individual, they get it wrong. And I understand, because I'm speaking mostly to 15, 16, 17-year-olds. I tell them you have to be accountable. Good, bad, or indifferent. Whatever situation you find yourself in, you have to be accountable to that situation. I don't care if you're the manager of 15 people and somebody in that underneath you does wrong. You have to be accountable to the fact that they did something wrong under your watch. Just like when we were kids. This is why we never went out and got in trouble, because we knew we had to be accountable to our parents, because we were carrying our parents' name. And if we did something wrong, it reflected poorly upon them. This is why we ask people, who raised you? Because you were responsible for instilling in you a set of values that you would carry forth with you into your life. And it was those values that brought you to a certain standard of behavior. And there were certain things that were beneath you that you would not engage in. And I think that is lost upon us.
Yeah. I think healing is it's a lot of levels. I mean, I think, Herb and David, y'all both touched on it. The conversations have to take place. That's necessary. We have to be accountable for our families and our community. But I think we also have to gain, something. And people, it sounds like a catchphrase, but we really have to gain knowledge of self. And a lot of times people think knowledge of self means reading a book about Paul Robeson, or reading a book about Black history, or engaging in the process of learning about Black history. Knowledge of self is much deeper a concept than, learning Black history, because Black history there's no cap that you can really put on Black history. I mean, that goes on and on and on. We can go forever, literally. But I think knowing what makes you move, what makes you function, knowing your nature and knowing your connection to not only just your immediate family, but your connection to generations before you and what happened to them. How what happens to those generations before you ties into what's happening right now. Understanding that our ancestors were tied to ancestors before them. And what did those ancestors look like? And knowing that those ancestors were tied to ancestors before them. And what did those ancestors look like? And what was the true nature of our people prior to our sojourn in America, prior to our sojourn in the Caribbean, prior to our sojourn in the diaspora, wherever Black people were spread or disseminated throughout the earth? What was our nature and what did we look like before that? if we can start digging deeper and looking at, our true nature and some of the values that we upheld. I think I asked a question on Facebook about, all the religions on the planet, all the deities on the planet, all the traditions and belief systems on the planet. And people have the tendency to say, I have the truth. And, that's a very subjective way of thinking in a sense, because if you have the truth, but there's still so much information you haven't gained, or so much you haven't ascertained as a result of learning, how do you even say that you have the truth? So I think we got to, really dig deeper. And once we start digging deeper and going deeper, I think we'll start uprooting some of that damage and some of those traumas, and then we'll start being able to like pull up the necessary resources internally to heal ourselves.
But that's only as good as the oldest relative that's living in the family to give you that information.
But see, a
I
lot of
know.
them don't have it. Just think about, and I'm not. This is not the, I know my mother is on here, and I don't want to make it. I don't want to get smacked when I see her.
She still be smacking you.
No, it's not about. But I'm saying like a lot of our parents, grandparents, they didn't have all the information. They did the best they had with what they had. So it's like when I say dig deeper, I mean even beyond them. I mean, yes, they can give us those family roots in terms of our immediate family and our family tree and everything. But like, there's some deeper issues that even happen. Like you and you know this, David. You can see deeper issues. What we can sit amongst our family, and just sit there and observe. Like,
And when I was going for my master's in counseling, I had to do a genogram. So I sat with, as we call my grandmother, Bay, and she told me how the evolution would led them to go to Niagara Falls, the salaries, the reason, who drank, who had these type of illnesses. So I got a better sense, and that was a good project to sit with her, and we sat for a couple hours and talked.
yeah. So it's a lot of that history. I remember, and I seen Ron. He's on here, but Aunt Viola is one of the matriarchs in our family. She gave me jewels on the family that I didn't even know existed. I was like, whoa. I'm not gonna get into all that because it ain't none of y'all business. But it was some stuff about the family that I had no knowledge of. But a lot of that stuff is telling and compelling. I think we need to dig. We need to continuously dig, and find out all of those different things. So thank you for asking those questions, Latoya.
The funny thing about it is, I've never met my biological father. And I'm going to presume he's dead. My mother just passed, like I said, in November, and she was 84.
Condolences, bro.
Oh no, man. The funny thing about, and I'll segue, to this just to get back to that. We had her cremated, and I think that eased a lot of the anxiety and pain that we would have potentially felt. She had been in remission from colon cancer, and she was doing pretty well, but she had started to lose some weight in her later years. She had lost her vision and things of that nature. But through it all, when we got to the facility and we had the memorial service, there was only dry eyes, smiles, and laughter. And I was just saying this on our Monday night show. The only thing that we were missing there, because my mother loved the Pepsi, was we missing a 16-ounce bottle of Pepsi that we could open up and pour out some libation, to celebrate her life. So I'm always of the mindset that we have to learn from our prior generation. That was one thing one of my other boys said to me. He said, you never stopped to ask your mother anything about your father or anything. I said, it never really occurred to me because I was so busy just trying to live day to day as a younger kid, especially when I was being moved from foster home here to foster home there, until I got to a point where I said, okay, you know what? I can't really deal with this type of life. And I left foster care to go back home to my mother, and from then I've been able to pick up the pen and write my own path in history through life. But the reason why I say that is this: we owe it to ourselves, that once we get free of certain bonds, to look back and understand where it is that we've come from, and to not forget that, but to build upon that. And what we can't get from our parents, we need to go back to museums, to written history. Because a lot of our history is oral, so we don't have that anymore. It's like my brother said, you know, once we had the memorial service, he said, when an older person dies, it's like a library has burned down, and you don't have access to that library anymore. So I think it's important that we do not stand in judgment of what our fathers, mothers did when they were our age.
Right.
It's up to us just to understand it. Like I always tell people, mine is not to wonder why. Mine is not to wonder why. It's just to ask. I'm in an information-seeking position right now. I ask questions because I want to know, not because I want to judge. And I don't have my glasses on now, which kind of will make the joke a little more apropos. I always tell people, even though I look like Judge Mathis, I'm not here to judge you. That's not my position. Not unless I get caught. Not unless I get called on a jury duty or something like that. I don't need to judge you because I'm not trying to be judged. Heaven knows I judge myself enough.
Yeah.
I hold myself to a level of excellence and perfection that I'll never reach. And I'm okay with that because I'm trying to be that better person. Every day I wake up, I'm trying to improve on the day before and the day before and the day before. So I'll become a better version every day of what I was the day before. And I think that's something we all need to strive for, because as long as we're moving towards betterment, there should be nobody that should be able to complain about you as long as you try and striving for improvement.
All right. Let me see. Somebody made a comment, not being afraid to ask questions and not being scared of the answer. How does one go down a rabbit hole when facing our own reflection in the mirror? We're not prepared or equipped to handle.
I'll answer that question. The way you
No, I think they might. I think for this segment, I want Carlos to answer it first. I want him to answer, get a shot at that.
I think we have to be bold and courageous.
Mhm.
And the reason why I paused, because I had to contemplate on that. We have to be bold and courageous. We have to. A lot of times, our biggest fear is ourselves. Actually manifesting certain weaknesses that we feel we may possess, or not necessarily weakness, but even challenges. I think we just have to be courageous in every capacity. If we know that we have things that we want to know or information that we want to gain, we have to be courageous and seek it. LaToya also was saying in the comments about, going back and studying your history and how, that journey sometimes leads you to a brick wall. Like you keep going and you keep going and you keep going. It's like, how much more information do I gain? How much do I obtain? When does that stop? And, I sort of mentioned it before. I said, there's no real limitation on it. You just have to keep going, because as long as there is people, there has been Black people. As long as there was human existence, there's been Black existence. So that's eons and, trillions of years of history that still has to be unearthed. The beautiful thing about our ancestors, and I'll say this, they had to have some type of foresight to know that at some point we have to leave signs on the planet, because at some point our people are going to fall asleep.
Mhm.
When they left certain monuments, when they left certain infrastructures and they set them up strategically in certain locations on the planet, it had to be by design for them to say at some point this history will be lost. And I heard you say, Herb, about oral tradition. And our people always were, big on oral tradition, passing down stories from generation to generation. That was a major thing. When they came amongst like the Native Americans in this country, they were big on oral tradition. when they went amongst like certain African tribes, they were big on oral tradition. Most native cultures are big on oral tradition and passing down stories from generation to generation. So storytelling has always been a part of our connection to our ancestors, connection to our people. And our people always, in their divine wisdom, their divine insight, knew that at some point, something is going to happen that's catastrophic on this planet, that's going to cause a major shift in how great our people were. And we're going to have to leave some kind of sign on our planet so that our people can know, like, look, you were these people that built the pyramids at some point. Look at the noses that was blown off of the monuments and the different statues throughout ancient Kemet. These noses were like yours. Go amongst to Mexico and look at some of the cultures in Mexico and the pyramids and, you know, the different statues that actually show that these people had big, broad lips, big noses. Even if you go around amongst the, like, I think they're called the native Filipinos, the native Japanese, the native Chinese. If you go back amongst those native people, those are black populations, indigenous people. So, like, we left signs everywhere. Literally, we left signs everywhere on the planet. And we just have to start unearthing some of that stuff. Some of the stuff is in our ancestors. Some of it's in our grandparents, great-grandparents. The stories are, even though the stories may seem like they're gone, a lot of the stories are still present. We just have to, like, do the work to find them.
And to what Carlos is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a book called The Browder Files by Anthony Browder, and he chronicles the number of shots that were used to take out the nose of the Sphinx. Now, from what I understand of the book, that's where the 7 and 21 gun salutes came from.
Yeah. I'm funny you said it. I'm looking at the Browder Files and survival strategies right now. I don't know if were you at Buff State when we brought him to speak on campus? Okay, yeah.
No, I wasn't there. I was already gone. But yeah, no, I'm familiar with the books and things of that nature. Because, and see, this is the beautiful thing about having these type of organizations. We always used to talk about Harambe bookstores, which was specifically a black-owned bookstore that catered to that type of material. And we always talk about going over there during the AASO meetings and purchasing those items. I never made it over there, but I've never forgotten about that.
Yeah, I think everybody on the east side of Buffalo knew that Harambe's was the community spot. Black people in Western New York, they knew about Harambe's. Like, Harambe's was the spot. Even if you would travel from, like, different places in Western New York, they would go to Harambe's. I'm not even sure if they even have a black bookstore anywhere in that area now.
I don't think so. That's the unfortunate part. And that was the reference to the library. You know, so much information is lost to us, not because we don't have a place, but simply we just don't support it sometimes.
Yeah.
And in the capitalistic society, if you don't support something, you know, it ceases to exist.
Now, one of the things I had left the link in the stream if somebody else wanted to come on instead of typing. I mean, we can go on a little longer. And if they want to come in and ask questions, feel free to do so.
Yeah, bring some people in here. You know, let's make it fun. Let's make it worth our while.
So then you might as well also drop another. I seen a couple poems. I didn't get through the whole book, but I read a couple of them, like niggas and bitches, toxic, fecal matters.
Okay.
Talk to me about that fecal matters stuff.
The Fecal Matters poem was basically, I just wanted to talk about a lot of issues and pretty much release a lot of issues poetically. I called it Fecal Matters because it was talking about a lot of shit, for lack of better words. And, you know, when I said these are fecal matters, all shit, it's all shit we need to talk about. Let's talk shit out. That's like the little punchline in that poem. It was really because I wanted to talk about a lot of issues that was going on and how, issues are constant. They're constantly happening. There's always something new coming on or something new happening. And sometimes if you're not quick enough, you may lose that opportunity to even like engage in those conversations. So, Fecal Matters, that was a poem that interestingly, I wrote that poem a while ago. It was like literally probably in the first few years of President Trump's presidency. But when I wrote it mentally years ago before I even wrote it. And then it didn't really manifest until like President Trump at the time got into office. I was like, I gotta talk about some of this, and that's what I ended up why I ended up calling it Fecal Matters. But yeah, so I just wanted to talk about a lot of stuff, a lot of issues in that poem.
So can we hear that poem? And that'd be the last one I ask you to recite.
Oh. And that interestingly, I actually wanted to recite something else, but since you asked, and this is your show, sir, I shall. Let me find it. Again, bear with me, cocktail conversation viewers, audience. It would be beautiful if I can actually get some participation when I read this poem, because it's sort of one of those poems that I actually would like participation. I don't think we can do that realistically. I'm just being facetious, but it would be also good if I knew the page number of the poem. Bear with me. David, did you find the page number?
I know it's in chapters. Must be in the second session.
You know what? You're right. That's why I'm in the first. Okay.
Yeah, it's page 23.
Yeah, I found it. Fecal Matters. It's kind of long, so y'all bear with me. And Mom, if you're listening, bear with me.
She should be in the bed by now. Rockabye baby.
Fuck you and your Trump card. Let me start that over. Fuck you and your Trump card. I'll stump hard on your bullshit. Shit. I never made a Bush a hero. Alive or dead, condolences zero. But you niggas keep condoning shit. Even if their skin's like yours, but their allegiance isn't, why are you still owning shit? I never had a president, never claimed one. Name one. I remained reluctant or hesitant. Observed how they all functioned and remained a warner. Not one of these motherfuckers was in our corner. Even when Bill was the head of state and to him Monica's head was great, he wanted your head on a stake, supported by his wife to push Biden's bill to push mass incarceration for niggas, locking our black asses up compared to others at a disproportionate rate. Now Donald Trump says, let's make America great again. What's the real message he's trying to send? These are fecal matters. All shit. It's all shit we need to talk about. Let's talk shit out. Abraham Lincoln had an agenda. JFK had an agenda. Every president gave two fucks about you. Actually, no fucks. You just keep getting shitted on by the red, white, and blue. Wait, the red was colonized by the white for the blue lives to matter. Matter of fact, they keep bending over, opening up their shithole to continuously release fecal matters. Now it doesn't matter if the chit-chatter hits, national or international, you're still getting brutalized and battered with nightclubs, outside of a nightclub, or gunned down being a catalyst for movement that keeps you stagnated, organized marches, boycotts, but little to no improvement. Now you're not drinking Starbucks? Shucks. Do you think they give two fucks? You'll just run your black ass to another one of their establishments, and they'll still get the bucks, line their ducks. Watch you cowardly chickens boycott and cluck. What the fuck? Shut nothing down. They'll issue an apology, regain your trust and sympathy, and to them, you'll still remain a clown, wanting to be down. These are fecal matters. All shit. It's all shit we need to talk about. Let's talk shit out. The Clintons had an agenda. Barack Obama had an agenda. Every president gave two fucks about you. Actually, no fucks. We just keep getting shitted on by the red, white, and blue. Wait, your red blood keeps getting shed to uphold white supremacy and you're feeling blue. Clearly, black lives never matter. What matters is the fecal shit they say is true. So their narrative becomes imperative. Their reason becomes your treason. Speaking against injustice makes you anti-American. They'll have you justifying nigga killing season. Shit. You become an opponent when you don't condone it. If you support independent black leaders or movements like South Africans, seizure of land from white farmers that originally stole land from native South Africans, you're told to condemn and disown it. Shit. Nah, fuck that shit. I know it's a hard pill for you to swallow, but I'll continue to clench my black fists, wanting Africans at home and abroad to stand high like Kilimanjaro, praying and working for the removal of all kind of sorrow. And I had to hurry to get this out without approval, because in 2 hours the content will be old and there will be more fecal matters by tomorrow. Oh shit. What's that?
Man, yo. I thought I had some shit with me, yo, man. Hey, I'm with you. I'm gonna have to cop that, son. I don't know if the world is ready for that, man. Yeah, that's as we like to say, yo, that's some heavy shit, son.
Yeah, that was but I just wanted to get into a lot of issues, and I hope y'all enjoyed it. Like I said, committing to memory is always a better process when you're reading or doing a reading. It's always a better process. So
it's funny you say that. It reminds me of the last school board election I ran for. We were supposed to have been giving 2 minutes for our opening statements, but they cut it down to like 35 or 45 seconds. So I had to truncate what I had originally written. And I sat down and just created this masterful, at least what I thought was a masterful opening. So I had to, go back and redo what it was on the fly. And I was just like, this is tough. Yeah. So I'm where, what you're coming from. When you get that committed to memory, it allows you, you're like an artist with a brush, except the brush is your mouth and your canvas is other people's ears. So how you dictate speed, pace.
Oh, absolutely.
All of that matters.
The breath control, everything is much better. But nevertheless, I think it was clear, and everybody understood the point. And that's the major point. I just think there's a lot of things that we have to uncover and a lot of things that we have to be passionate and bold enough to even express. Black people are too fearful. Let's just be straight up. Black people are too fearful. We're afraid of ourselves. We're afraid of white folks. Definitely. We're afraid of everything that potentially may offend white folks. We're just a fearful people. And I think even when I'm approaching certain content, I have friends who will say to me, they'll be like, you got to be careful. Like, wait. What I got to be careful about? You just have to be careful about how you say things because you don't want to offend people. And really and truly, I don't think being deliberately offensive is done with care. But I think if you're offensive, but your intent is like to provide something that is actually going to like change something or, or break down something that's negative, then it's okay to offend people in that regards. Because making people comfortable because they're in a position of power. And I actually have a poem in here, and I'm not going to read it because I want you to, buy the book. But I have a poem here called Discomfort that actually talks about that, allowing people to be comfortable while you're uncomfortable and allowing people to be able to exist with a certain level. White privilege affords white people a certain level of comfort in this country. Mm-hmm. And that crosses every line, whether it's like, talking about our own history. We have to be careful how we put it out there. Whether it's talking about a black leader who may exhibit strong leadership qualities, we have to be careful in how we embrace them. I mean, when you have people who say to you, like, you don't want to embrace a leader like that. You may want to separate yourself. Look at how, most black leaders have to politically have to take what they call the Farrakhan test or the Minister Farrakhan litmus test. And, these things are only seen in communities where people are so highly controlled and so afraid that, they feel like people can actually conduct, dictate everything that they do in their agenda. That's not cool. So we have to be like courageous. We have to start challenging that fear.
And one of the things, and I do want you to read that poem because that's some of the things that I always talk about, being comfortable, uncomfortable. And that's the thing, that's growth. When you start feeling uncomfortable about certain situations,
Right.
you know as well as I know, never in a million years you would have thought, like, damn, David doing a podcast, he'd have hosted that. That's never been my style,
Oh,
or whatever
absolutely.
the case is. But I knew it would help me grow as far as this. So that's just something that we have to be uncomfortable, and for people to be worried about you shouldn't say this or you shouldn't say that. I'll admit there's a lot of things I don't say because of my position in the school system, but I realize when I just look at other stuff around, the people that's getting places, they don't give a, excuse my language, they don't give a fuck what they say. And it seemed like people galvanize behind those type of people because they don't care, and you got masses of people following them. So I think we're in a time of age now. We can't hold back. If it's on your mind, just say it and maybe deal with the repercussions later. As long as you ain't harming children physically,
Yeah.
and you're not emotionally abusing them, or you're not in no nursing home cutting the food, doing something to the elderly, say what the hell you want, whatever, if it feel good at that time.
Now
Nah.
I do.
It,
I will agree with you on this, David. I do think we have to we have to use discretion on how we deliver, anyways. But I'm not saying that in a fearful way. I'm only saying that in a way where, is this the right place to deliver this message now? Or my problem is when people are afraid to be truthful because they want to make somebody feel comfortable. When they know that the truth is what's needed at that moment in order to break up some of the lies and break up some of the madness. Those are the type of issues I'm addressing. I know that some stuff you might be at work and you're like, okay, we're in a setting where this is not an appropriate conversation for this setting, and I'm just saying that in general. But I
Mm-hmm.
think we have to be like, when it comes to like systemic racism, when it comes to global white supremacy, when it comes to those institutions that are damaging to black people, we have to be blatant, we have to be bold, we have to be courageous, and we have to be, non-apologetic. We have to say, look, it is what it is, and we have to address it because it's not going to change. We're not here to make you feel comfortable at our own expense. So we have to address that. And I think that's the stuff that I'm talking about.
Now, I see on here, Tasha Ray, and I think that's another thing when people say some black people. Understand most of the time when you say black people, we know there's no absolutes that anyone, not no one is talking about 100% black people. So that's the argument we gotta kind of push to the side and say, I know they're not talking about every black person.
Yeah.
When they say, "Oh, black men are lazy, black men are do this, they're womanizers." If you're a black man and you know that's not you, you don't even entertain that.
Right.
right.
You don't even entertain that. So a lot of stuff is put out there that we know it's only a couple absolutes in this world. So if that's going to be people's argument, not all black people, not all women, not all men, you might as well
Yeah.
tuck it in.
They need to just cut it out. Like, we people people speak in general terms sometimes, but if it doesn't apply, let it fly. Cut it out. Just cut it out.
We got Latoya Brolick T on here. Thanks for joining the panel. I know you had a lot of stuff to say
How you
in
doing?
the chat. I'm sure
How
you
you
got some more
doing?
questions.
I mean, good evening, gentlemen. I mean, I agree with most of what you said as far as like being about using discretion about what you say and how you say it and when you say it. That's something that I always tell my students about, and I teach middle school. So, and I
Yeah.
teach middle school special ed, and my students are a
Oh, yeah.
wide variety of disabilities. A couple that come to mind are the ones who have like behavior problems, and that's like the conversations I'm constantly having with them because they're like, "Well, I'm a kid." I'm like, "You're a kid right now, and you're a kid in
Yeah.
this building. But if you was to go outside and do the things that you do here in this building, they don't see a child. They see a threat. They
Right.
see this color and they see a threat. That's all they see. You're not a 12-year-old kid who's just having a tantrum. You're not a 13-year-old kid having a tantrum. You are a threat, and they have to take down that threat. I said, and there is no discretion because their training is not to coddle you, not to talk you down, it's to take you down, to eliminate the target.
Yeah.
I was like, so one of the things that I talk to my kids about is like when they come to me and they're all irate and I'll be like, hey, pause. First of all, I need you to bring it down a couple notches because if you're yelling, I stop listening.
Yep.
You know, I said, and that's any person. If you're yelling, nobody's going to follow what you're saying because first of all, we can't understand what you're saying. I said, so, you know, bring it down, take a breath. Now tell me what's on your mind. You know, and these are skills that I try to teach my children because it's not something that some of them are being taught at home because some of them, their mamas come there and they want to scream at me and I'm like, pause. I don't even know what you irate about. So I'm going to need you to give me a second. And a lot of times it'd be about something that doesn't even have anything to do with me. They just came in a huff.
And one of the things when I speak on that, we have to understand if everything go to how it's planned out to be, that we're an adults longer than you are a kid. Mm-hmm. So you have very little, them years of being a kid is
very little time to get it together.
Very little time. And then the rest of that time is adulthood. So it's very vital during those ages, during that time, that lifespan, that you have to give them the skills and tools because, hey, when you turn 18 or even before that, actually 16, you can go to jail or whatever the case is.
Here in Louisiana, they can put you in as young as 10 years old.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's important that they get those skills. And like Carlos was saying, you got to have these courageous conversations. And I know for me, a lot of times we say, I mean, let kids be kids, but I think you have to have a balance in how you deliver the message to them so that they can understand and be prepared. It's a cruel world out here, and a lot of people trying to make you uncomfortable. So, Carlos, could you drop that poem?
Oh, the discomfort. Okay.
Yeah.
This is actually one of the shorter poems I wrote for the book. You know, you always got to have them little quick ones that it's pretty short. It's called Discomfort. Don't patronize me with tokens or provide me with trinkets to go along to get along. Meanwhile, the very system you created and upheld to oppress me and suppress me still remains strong. Don't paint me as a troublemaker or disillusioned when I mention race, when race is the social construct you created to keep me in my place. I'm not comfortable with that. Don't avoid the topic to feel comfortable while my discomfort is never considered. Meanwhile, you mention our gains and progress while we suffer on so many levels disproportionately, and equality and equity for us has not been delivered. Are you comfortable in my discomfort? Is ending systemic racism something you really want to see? When white supremacy is global and continues to perpetuate the differences between you and me. I'm not comfortable with that. That's that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you can see, like you said, a lot of this was designed sort of for like everyday situations, and pretty much all aspects of life is deals with systemic racism. Whether people want to look at it or not, they might look at it and may look at more so when they're going through prejudice that's the only thing they tie into systemic racism. But this is so much bigger. It's so bigger that, like you said, in the school system, every meeting they're talking about is equity and all of this stuff, to the point some of us black people who've been through this stuff, like, I'm so tired of this. I am so tired of them talking about this, because to me, it has to be in your heart. I don't know that you could go through these trainings and all of a sudden then you're a new person and you're like, oh, I love black people. I love such and such, when all your life you've been taught a certain way and it's learned behavior. I don't know if it's going to change. So a lot of times I'm like, I could be doing something else. I could be doing something. Why do I got to, I don't know, man. I try to have open mind.
I was actually in one of those meetings, and we had you know how they have the Zoom breakout rooms, and one of the moderators and facilitators actually ended up in my breakout room, and I said, I'm sick of us having these I told her, I said, I'm sick of us having these unmeaningful dialogues about systemic racism. She's like, "Whoa, what do you mean by what do you mean by that?" I said, we use all these catchphrases, implicit bias and blah blah blah. I mean, they'll use all the like pretty language, but it's not really anything substantive that's really gonna like make any like real change. Like, and I've like you, David, I've been in literally ever since COVID, I've probably been in about maybe 10, 11 different meetings that was literally centered around systemic racism, equity, bias. It's like every other training is something along those lines.
Relationship building, being able to understand your children and where they come from.
Yeah. So, it's like they're learning the language, but it's like, okay, these are more tokens and trinkets that you're giving to us to appear as though, you're really interested in changing things. Like you're really interested in. That's why I said, like, when I wrote the book, and this is not to, well, I guess it is a little bit. Let me not lie. I think when I wrote Systemic Racism and I put certain things in the book, I was like, look, this has to be impactful. It has to be impactful in a way where I touch on issues that a lot of the other books on systemic racism wouldn't necessarily, touch on, because they're trying to do it in a way where they're making people comfortable and not ruffle any feathers. And, I've read the literature on it. I have books, like ironically, I got more free books now since COVID, just from being in these trainings. I got more books on systemic racism, equity, and I'm looking at some of the books now. I just have like a pile of books that I've been given, just working, like coming to a training and get another book. But they're so careful. These books are so careful. They're so careful. I just think that we have to get beyond that, and and have the real conversation. If you're really interested in real change, then you have to have the real conversation. You have to do the real work. And if you're really interested in change, you have to do what you have to do to start tearing down some of these walls, some of these systems. You're not going to leave that Hitler up. You're not going to leave that Hitler statue up. Why are you going to leave that Columbus statue up? I'm just saying that, to make a point.
You know what that reminded me of? Back in my college days, it was a young lady. We went to college. We never said much to each other. Then one time, she was a social worker. I was a social worker. We were both at the hospital, and we had clients there, and we exchanged numbers and started connecting. She was biracial, but she had one of our conversations. She was like, "I never been in the hood," and then she was like, "Is it possible that I can come hang out with you one day and just, go through, navigate through it?" And we did that. We got up and we rode around. I got a couple of my buddies. She was in the car with us. We got 40 ounces. We was on the set on Highland Avenue, and we was just in Unity Park, Jordan Gardens. We just went all around those areas in Niagara Falls. And and she was asking questions, and people was like, I will say his name. Oh, okay, Jabbar. He was like, "Yo, who the hell is this? She writing a book or something?" Because she was asking mad questions. But at the end of it, she felt like, man, like this was one of the best experiences I ever had. She's like, so many things have been told to me, how this culture is and how they respond, how they act. And she was like, it was totally different. Everyone was nice. Everyone was, they greeted me, and of course, they wanted to know who she was. But she actually got out there in the field and figured out and learned stuff on her own instead of constantly hearing. So a lot of times we have, and they try to do this in the school system now, that during orientation, they go through a little bus ride in the community where the students live, but they haven't got to the point. Get off that damn bus or whatever y'all at, and interact or whatever. But they're starting to try to have more interactions like that, because when you never worked and been in that type of environment, and you come in and you're a teacher, and that day one hits, and they come in there, I don't give a damn what school you went to. If you ain't intern or did no practicum in there, you're gonna be in for a rude awakening. So
sometimes that don't even help you.
And that's just only a short time span, but you gotta kind of be out there. You gotta get out there to kind of have them conversations and have those interactions.
And you know, the thing about it is, this is why we have our, for those of you who've never checked out our Monday night shows, this is why we have those shows. You know, a lot of people, and I know it, especially when it comes to me, a lot of people think I'm cool and unyielding when it comes to certain topics. And what I tell people is this: I speak to the realities that a lot of people are unwilling to accept, or even really just acknowledge that they exist. So when we have those panels, we do not attack each other. You know, this past Monday was a clear example that we had a gentleman that sat on there, and he was messaging me, and he was saying that he liked the energy, you know, that was exhibited on the panel. And what we try and do is we try and foster dialogue. We try and create an environment that allows the difficult conversations to start to take place. And this is it's symbolic to it, or it's emblematic of a ball rolling. Once a ball starts rolling downhill, it will continue to roll until something else acts upon it and stops it from rolling. And all we need to do is to get that ball rolling. You know, those conversations will happen. It will be organic to the point where people will be just like, why didn't we think about this sooner? Or why didn't we do this sooner? And that's when we start to be able to break down the walls that Carlos is talking about. But until that happens, those walls are going to stand.
Now, I got a request, Carlos, that somebody said they wanted you to read Bitches and Niggas. Hey, okay. Sometimes you got to have these conversations, whatever. Excuse my French for you to say, oh, that hurts too much. I'm church going. Y'all didn't heard worse stuff. So
pretty much.
Yeah, so I ain't checking for that whenever. Like I said, if it makes you uncomfortable,
get comfortable.
Then you're going to grow. Then you're going to grow eventually.
All right. Bear with me. I know that's in the beginning of the book, so I should be able to find that relatively fast. All right. Niggas and bitches. Jasmine. All you niggas just want to be niggas. So guess what? I'm going to call you niggas. Everybody want to be fella niggas. Thugged out rebelling niggas. Popping pill, cocaine selling niggas. Tekashi 6ix9ine type. Ooh, I'm telling niggas. I'm telling niggas to love themselves, but they're whispering white and yelling niggas. Coon ass Popeye's chicken sandwich, slurping on watermelon niggas. Emasculated, so I put the male in niggas. While the next man is flying your whizzer kite, you DM and IM and texting and emailing niggas. While your favorite rappers are selling out, they brag about how they outselling niggas. While they bragging about transporting that white, whites write about how they were selling and transporting when they start selling niggas. Change your language, culture, got you eating soul food, hog maws, black eyed peas, collard greens, and chitlin' smelling niggas. Clogged up arteries, high blood pressure, diabetes, short lifespan, health failing niggas. Now niggas are what niggas do. Giant coon, ham bone, spear chuckers, figure who, jigaboo, nigga you, term of endearment niggas, crack epidemic chemists, victims of Black Wall Street defeat, white supremacy systemic, Tuskegee experiment niggas, black talk, I ain't hearing it niggas, black talk, nah, all I'm hearing is niggas. Now let's talk about bitches. Jasmine has been and has been a has been, attracting titties and as men come as men, running, coming, and blasting. She has them, outlast them, then pass them, taking all advances, never surpass them, or ask them for anything, free good time, then cast them. She sexes fast, make exes fast, to exit fast, not meant to last. She just wants to give up ass. That's her meaning, not demeaning. She's a female demon, scheming for the semen, no screening, much intervening, seeming pleasing for the evening, and leaving before the morning fleeting, beating concrete beaming. From sex, who's next? This nympho's fiending. From sex, who's next? This nympho's fiending. Is Jasmine a dirty bitch, or is she sexually free? would this narrative switch if we were talking about me or he or we, or how we see women that love sex but are ill reputed when the role switches? All you niggas that want to be niggas, that call yourself niggas, that do that, are also the real bitches.
Ooh. Shots fired.
Niggas and bitches. Jasmine.
Wear your vest, because those are headshots.
You most certainly touched on a lot of points in there.
Yeah.
Where do
Headshots.
I begin?
Who requested that?
I ain't saying. Whoever requested it, they wanted some smoke. So that
I hope they was wearing something, boy, because them are headshots.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna try to keep us on to like 15 more minutes. I don't want to take up too much more your time. So again, if anybody want to come in, we do have the link is posted. I'll post it again. But as you can see, no matter what way we have to deliver this, these messages have to be put out there. And sometimes the best way is when it's not filtered and you can kind of say what you want to say and what's on your mind. And that's the good thing also sometimes of having your own platform. Now, granted, a lot of people have way bigger platforms and they reach out to more people. And it only starts when we start. Again, we always talk about sharing, subscribing to people pages and stuff like that. And then sooner or later, stuff like this grows.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the key things. And it's a struggle. It's not easy. And a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to get on and do a podcast. I'm going to get on here and talk. Or I'm going to write a book because that's one of the trending things. So I'm going to write a book. They don't know the work behind all of this. This is not easy work. It's not easy work at all, especially when you have full-time jobs. Sometimes people have part-time jobs, and you still have to do research. You still have to have talking points. You still have to write drafts and stuff like this. It's not easy. So don't ever underestimate. Be more appreciative to people who do this. And I'm not just saying that because I'm in this arena, because I'm in the trenches with kids on a regular basis. Well, I haven't been since COVID, but guess what? Tuesday, I go back to work. The kids won't be there until maybe March 15th or something like that.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm in the trenches every day, all day long. But this is not easy work. So don't ever underestimate it and be more appreciative with people like Carlos, who was an educator. Also wrote two-time award winner, wrote 3 books. Herb that works in part of my podcast also with Dr. Anwar Dunbar out in the YouTube world. Latoya as an educator in New Orleans. This stuff is not simple.
Collins.
Yeah.
And
I had to say that.
Saying for every hour, for every hour that you see, especially Dave's workload is incomprehensible compared to what I do. I mean, for every hour that you see us sitting here, there's a chance that we probably put in at least 2 hours behind the scenes, whether it's promoting the show, doing some research, or writing up things. So believe me, it's late and heavy. Like you said, we all have our individual jobs that we do in addition to this. So, we do this as a labor of love. We don't do this asking for money. The things that we do because we know it needs to be done. So I always say I do things for 1 or 2 reasons. It has to be done or it needs to be done. I think this is a need. Granted, I'm tired. I took a half an hour nap before I did this show. And when I sit in this chair, I become energized and invigorated to sit here and speak. Because I understand that the people that receive this message and hear these words, they receive them in good faith and they take them with them. And they go and they have a different mindset and then they grow. And it's like the sun, when it hits the spring after the snow melts and it thaws and everything starts to grow and blossoms. This is why I love these type of shows and events. And make no mistake, this is an event because there's nowhere else on this world that you're going to be able to hear the type of poetry that you just heard put in such a concise manner that forces you to sit back and think and genuflect on what it is that we have to endure.
Speaking of, this is a little off topic, but not on topic. I just, when we talk about a labor of love and somebody who put work in, I would be remiss if I didn't mention another New Orleans native, Jovan Swan, who labored literally night and day, to put this book out in terms of the editing, the fine cover, the formatting. I'm appreciative of her for doing that, because I told, and I'm going to just share something. When I initially came up that said I was going to write the book, I already knew she was in graphic art, and I sent her the book cover that I came up with. I ain't going to tell y'all what was on there, but it was like, she was like, oh, hell no, Negro. You done lost your mind. So she took my little book cover and, she was like, I'm going to send you something back in a few days. And I was okay. So she sent me back, a few drafts of the book cover. I was like, yo, where's the stuff I had on there? I'll just say a little thing. I had Biden on the cover and Trump and Hillary Clinton. I had them with horns coming out of their head, all type of crazy stuff. So she was like, no, you're not going to do that for your book cover. She was like, that's tacky. I was like, damn. So she, when she delivered the book, I was like happy with it. She read the whole book and she was like, I already got, I already know how to package this in my mind. And she like, one thing about writing books, you got to have an artist also in that process. So because she's so artistically inclined, she literally knew my vision and came up with all the stuff like the table of contents and everything that, brought the book to life. So I just wanted to give her a shout out while I'm on here and tell her I'm appreciative of her and that process. And you got to know the mind of the person who you're writing the book about. Even though my personal, art didn't make the cover, but, I think she did an amazing job. And the meaning behind it is even more amazing.
And I like to second that because I've done some work with Jovan too. So she's been very instrumental in both of us in different projects. So she's definitely on the rise. If you're someone in the market who's interested in that, like a graphic designer, because I see many people like, oh, I need a graphic designer, follow up with me and I'll connect you with her, and she's going to do good work. She's excellent. She's an educator as well. So her mind is already programmed like that. So it's wonderful, wonderful thing.
Isn't it beautiful how a woman always stops you from doing something that could hurt yourself? And that is definitely a shot fired.
Listen, we if we don't appreciate women, then we got a problem. Women are the bedrock. Women are our foundation. And I always say this to David, and I say it to my brother Deidre. I was like, look, if you really want to do something and you don't have women on your team, you're probably not going to go that far. I would say Biden was wise in that regard, where he realized, I got to bring women in. And it was really black women that carried Biden, all the way to the White House.
Yep. With
Stacey Abrams, Kamala Harris, and, all the other sisters that, rallied behind him. They got that white man to where he is. I got a poem about him in there too, by the way, but y'all read it when y'all read the book. Systemic racism and American poetic
is this is segueing slightly into politics. As I always tell people, get involved, because you never know where you're going to be useful at. And too often I hear a lot of my people talking about, well, I'm not going to vote because it doesn't matter. I say, you don't have to vote, but just be involved, because you don't know whose coattail you're going to be able to ride on to success. Get involved. You can't win the game unless you play.
That's true. So Carlos, tell people how they could get the book, where they can see more of your information, your page, Instagram, and all. I said it earlier, but it's probably come better here from you.
Well, I'm available on social media. I think I'm on every platform there is on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm pretty visible. If you've been on my Facebook, I'm pretty visible. Latoya, be quiet. I see your facial expression.
I ain't say nothing. I didn't say nothing, because then that would say something about me. The fact that I
Also, I think Instagram. You can Facebook. I'm Carlos.Muhammad on Facebook, or if you just do any search for Carlos Muhammad, you'll find me. I'm on there a bunch of times, and they're all me. If you see the same dude on there, that's me. Instagram, you can catch me at LOS, which is short for Carlos, Los Cause on Instagram, Los_cause on Instagram, and also Love for Self on Twitter. Love for Self is the name of the publishing venture, our enterprise company. Shout out to Keith Muhammad and Diedrich Muhammad of Love for Self Enterprises. I had to give them a shout out. The Love for Self team. Shout out to Jovan for all the work she did with the book. And you can also find the book at Barnes and Noble, Amazon. If you go on any of those sites, you can find the book. A lot of people have been telling me that they've been finding it difficult to find the book on Amazon. Just do a Google search, Carlos Muhammad, systemic racism, and all of those different connections like Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all of that should pop up. So
is there any way they could get it directly from you? Do you have your own personal inventory of books?
I have my own inventory of books too, and I made it available that if people want to, I'm actually in the process of trying to, put together another website. But for now, if you want to get the book directly from me, I did make it available that people can actually send the cash to me, $8, $6 for the book, and $2 shipping and handling. You can just Cash App Love for Self LLC. Money sign Love for Self LLC, and then you can purchase the book directly from me. And people did that because they wanted a signed copy. And, we're in COVID, so there's not a lot of like book signings going around. There's like, yo, how can I get a book signed? So I was like, you know what? If you buy it on the internet, you're not going to get it signed because just the way the process is and where the printer is and how that whole setup is. So the only way I can think about signing books is to have them available myself and for people to send me the money directly. And, if you want to do it that way, you can.
So what's the Cash App again?
Cash App is Love for Self. Well, $ Love for Self LLC. Now, I'm going to be honest because I know some people on here, and it's going to get quicker to you from Amazon. Trust me, because I have to order it from the printer. Once it gets to me, and the printer is already sending me, it's a delay on here, it's a delay there, it's a delay there. So once I get them, because I know some people don't have their books, and people are texting me and sending me emails like, yo, where's my book? It's coming to you. You didn't get robbed of your book. It's just a process because of COVID. There's a lot of, delays in mail and everything. And, I apologize for those people that ordered the book and they're still waiting. But the book is coming. You'll get your book before 2021 is over. I rest assure you. But the beautiful thing is you will have the signed copy. And I'm going to personally, like when I write the signature on these signed books, I'm going to personally write a message for each and every one of those that supported me. So that's work, writing all these signatures and making sure those people get those signed copies.
All right, let me just clarify. $ LOVE, the number 4, SE.
No, not LOV, it's LUV. I'm sorry.
Okay.
LUV for Self LLC. Yeah, don't send the money to the wrong person. I'm sorry. Did you put that up on the screen or something, David?
Not yet. That's what I'm getting ready to do right now.
I thought I put it. I don't know if hopefully it's the right one. Yeah.
All right. So one more time. $
link to the book in the comments. Hold on.
Yeah. $LUV, the number 4, Self LLC.
All right. It's in the show chat. Anybody that's looking for it, it's posted there. If you can't see it now, just go back and look at the rebroadcast and scroll through it. You'll find it almost at the 2-hour mark. It's at the 1 minute, 59-minute mark. You'll be able to find it there.
Okay. Thank you, Herb.
So,
Sir?
Any closing words? I'll let you go. I'll let Herb, Latoya, you go, then Carlos, you can close it out. Any closing words as we get ready to sign off on this broadcast?
This is Carlos's show, man. You take it on home, man.
Well, I want to thank you and Herb again for giving me the opportunity to come before, and it is an opportunity. Anytime you have the you know time, and you give somebody a platform, that's always something that should be applauded. So I really appreciate you brothers for giving me the floor on your you know show. I know you have a lot of and speaking of that, where are all those people that be on your show?
You know what? They probably.
I think they were afraid. I'm the
Yeah.
only one who showed up
Yeah,
because
no,
I
I
ain't
don't
never
even want
seen
to. I
it.
don't even say if they're afraid, but I think they know. Like,
Yeah, they
okay,
probably
we want to
do.
give him an opportunity to speak because once they get going, there's no ending. There's no ending.
Okay,
And
well, I
so,
appreciate it.
Be fair, we're not that bad.
Yeah.
y'all got. I love y'all all, but I'm just saying, if we wanted to highlight him, it might have been very small highlights.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'd love to come back on the show again. I had a good time.
You're always invited to come on.
I know
Always.
you invited me a million times, and
Yeah.
I mean, because I get caught up into all this other. Like I said, I get distracted, and maybe that's the artistic part of me. I'm
Or maybe you need medication and you just don't want to admit it.
No, you know what?
Lord,
And
here
his,
we go. Why
I'm all
everybody
over the
gotta have
place.
medication?
in his defense, it's easy because the funny thing about it is this. Like I sat down today when I got up, I woke up about 2 o'clock, 2:30. Now I sat down with the express intent of transferring information from one file to the other, so it was all in a set place. And I picked up my phone and I started listening to some hip hop videos, and then I got a clue for a riddle, and then I got a clue for another riddle. I found myself doing this, and I found myself doing that, and I'm just like, why can't I focus? Then I realized it's the creative mind that you don't want to put a cap on, because if you start putting a cap on the creative mind, you become stagnant and it becomes hard to create. So you have to let that creativity take you, just like a river will take you through all the meanders, the bends, dig up the silt, and just take it and deposit it somewhere. And you take that, you mold it, and then you put out a finished product. So I understand what he's saying.
It sounds good, but I'm going to
I don't completely agree with that either.
brother, medication. Put your scripts in.
Thank you. It's called get the work done first, play later.
And, I do one thing. I do. David always had discipline in that regard. In terms of growing up. And I ain't trying to prolong the show. I'm gonna conclude with my comments. But he always, he was always the one who was a student, who was focused. I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna complete this. And me and my other brother Diedrich, we was all over the place. Doing our own little thing. But it's just always been a struggle for me to bridle down and and get focused in that regard. So I do appreciate it. But once I'm ready to zone in, I'm zoning in. And when I did the systemic racism book, I was like, yeah, I'm coming out with this book, and I zoned in. One of my friends who's on the line said that's the ADHD, Carlos. I ain't calling out no names, but I do zone in. So I appreciate y'all. And last thing, if you heard anything today and you think like, this is worthy, just share it. It costs you nothing to share.
Yeah.
David mentioned that. It don't cost you anything. Nobody's asking you to take money out of your pocket. I mean, of course, purchase the book, which also costs you nothing. This book, I literally made this book $6.
There's other books. That book costs literally nothing.
Literally nothing. I made it cheap because I was like, you know what? I want this message to be out, but I also want it to be inexpensive. People will say COVID is the reason why they can't buy a book. People will say, finance is the reason. It's $6. You're going to spend $6 doing something frivolous during the week.
Coffee.
$6 on McDonald's.
Is at Starbucks.
Exactly. So I was like, I'll make it cheap. I'm not going to get rich from a $6 book. So if you're thinking like, well, Carlos is just trying to get rich from a $6 book, that's not going to happen. But I think the message is very pertinent, and it's something that we need to get out there to our people and support your own people. I mean, I think it's a legitimate and worthy cause to support a topic of this magnitude and in this manner. So, I appreciate the support in advance, and don't be afraid. I want to thank y'all again. I'm rambling right now, so I guess it's getting late.
Appreciate you having coming on, and this is the first. You were the first like author or guest that we had on this platform, because we have the Monday nights is more of open court discussions, and
Yeah.
that's what you probably tune in and probably like, what the hell were all these people and all the different feedback. Usually Thursdays is from my book Cocktail Conversations. I take scenarios from there, and people, they give me grief about all these scenarios seem negative and all that, but it depends on how you take it and what you can grow from. Again, there were courageous conversations. It's conversations that we have to have. But I definitely appreciate you coming on, and I know me and you supposed to team up on a project.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is always having projects as you get older, because like I told you when we had that conversation, like, dude, I'm 50. I'm gonna be 51 this year. You're gonna be 49. When we get 60, I don't know if we're gonna be relevant anymore. Like that.
You got to move now. So
yeah, the time is now. The time is now. Now you very well can be, but it's hard to start off all of a sudden at 60 to do something. Now you this big start. But if you were already working towards that, that's a different story. And then if you when you hit your 60s, you can ride all that stuff off, because there's people 60, 70, but we got to make some traction now. And now it's now and never. That's how I kind of look at it.
Now's the perfect time.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank Latoya for coming on. I know, Latoya, you got any closing words? I'm gonna give you that opportunity.
I mean, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. We're gonna talk about this niggas and bitches, because kind of gave me an idea for a nice little segment for Monday.
Okay, just drop the information. Always Herb, thanks for joining, being a part of the broadcast, and again, thank you, Carlos, for bringing your energy to dynamic poems and just the fire and actually a lot of knowledge that people don't think about. Always, if it's something I don't know, as far as history, I'll go to Carlos. He's my source, because he know I'm more sports oriented. But when it comes to all that stuff, if I have a question like who is this person or whatever, I'll reach out to him and he'll school me on that. And I ain't afraid to say it. I'm the older brother, but hey, some things he's more knowledgeable in. So, and I think that's a part of the problem with people. They look at age and stuff and feel like they can't go to nobody younger for information, and that's the wrong mindset to have.
Yeah.
All right, good people. We been over 2 hours, so appreciate you. And like I said, Carlos, you're always welcome. Whenever you want to come back, you know what to do. And hit me up, and we can make, instead of it cocktail conversations, we can make a segment about you, whatever in your book or whatever, some of your writings.
April is actually National Poetry Month, so maybe we can do something in April, and I can come back in April and we can do something.
Sounds good.
Just a thought.
Oh, that's all you got to do is let me know the date. We'll book it. All right, folks. Whatever. Appreciate you all. Everybody that came on the chat in Facebook world, YouTube world, and had commentary in the chat. Appreciate you all, and see you on Monday night in open court discussions. All right, good people. We out of here.
Peace, everybody.
All right.